Hey Dungeoneers, Luke here and welcome to a new tutorial video. And in today's video we are going to be going over settings for Black Desert Online, what settings I use, what ones I think are good, which ones I think are bad, and we're just going to be doing a quick rundown on how I have it set up so I can still get a really good frame rate, keep the game looking good, keep it looking clean, everything great like that. So we're going to open up the menu here, guys. Now this is the new menu and there's also the old menu. If you have this menu, the one on the left hand side here, you can click this little switch menu button at the very top left, and that'll bring you back to the old school menu, which is actually the one that I prefer. I want as few clicks as possible. You know, I don't want to have a whole bunch of sub menus. I just want it in the regular settings. So we'll open up settings here, and first things first, let's go to performance is the very first tab there. And under optimization. So I have auto frame optimization turned on. Automatically set the optimal frame rate for game performance. I think that's a bad translation. As far as I can tell, it's basically saying that it is going to adjust the game's quality to keep the frame rate that you have it set to. I obviously have mine set all the way up at 60. If it could go higher, I would have it higher. I haven't really noticed a massive difference between having this on and having this off in terms of the game quality, but it does definitely run better. So with all means, definitely have that on. Next up, upscale. This basically runs the game at a lower resolution and then stretches it to fit your screen, and it looks really awful. I'm not going to turn it on. If you have this on, unless you desperately need it on, like if you're getting 12 frames per second on like 1024 by 768, I mean, first off, maybe look at a different game to play. Outside of that, maybe turn on upscale. Now, low power option. Low power option is a weird one. Low power option says turn off in-game turn off to improve game performance by using up more of your computer's resources. This is basically if you play on a laptop, you can limit the game's frame rate in order to save battery power. Now, while that sounds like a horrible idea, and it is, apparently the game actually has this enabled by default. I don't know why, but whenever I start up the game on a fresh install, this is always turned on. So if you're lagging and you have a good PC and you don't know why, check that low power option, see if it's turned on, turn that shit off, and you'll be totally fine. Attack decisions. So the attack decisions are basically colors that'll come up to help show you your opponents telegraphing their abilities. I have it turned off. I don't really notice that much. I mean, a lot of the time, the only thing you really need to telegraph are things like world bosses, abilities, and stuff like that. And most of them have red circles on the floor anyway, so I don't really see the need to have that on. We don't want any unnecessary effects, you know, because that sort of cuts the frame rate. So we're going to go to the optimization beta tab. I have everything in here turned on. Effect optimization, I have it prioritize performance. Yes, the effects in this game look really good, but I like getting 144 frames per second at all times. So I have it turned to, basically it turns down the effects if it starts cutting your frame rate a little bit. So I have that turned on. Character optimization, this one's sort of a weird one. It says adjust from how far away other adventurers will be visible. I have it set currently at 50. You could crank this all the way down and pretty much not see other people. But it doesn't really matter that much if you have hide other adventurers turned on. Now, if you go, now I'll explain that one in a second. Movement frame optimization, I don't actually know how this one functions. It says optimize how others' characters' movement frames are updated. As far as I can tell, it basically shows less animations for other players to sort of keep your frame rate higher. I'm going to actually have this turned off. If you ever are PvPing, I recommend you turn this off because it might actually hide an animation that you needed to know, like somebody's stun is coming in, something like that. It might actually not show that, and you don't really want to mess around with that. Now, if you're just, you know, a regular grinder, you're not really big PvP or whatever, turn it on, you might get a couple extra frames out of it. Now, hide other adventurers. This one was actually brought over from Korea, and people were really excited about it, but it doesn't function the way they thought it did. It basically says hide other adventurers depending on the situation. Now, when it says depending on the situation, It basically means while you're out in the wilderness, if your frame rate's kind of low, it will hide other players as long as they don't flag up. Or if they are not in combat, essentially. So if there's somebody running by on their horse and, you know, your frame rate's getting kind of low, it'll recognize that. It'll actually hide them. Now, the issue with that, however, is if they flag up, they will still be visible, and it seems to not really work in towns too well as well. I think it's just in the field in a non-combat situation it'll hide other people. I think people were sort of hoping that it was going to be a literal hide all other players unless they're flagged up, including in towns, which would be really, really nice. I don't know why they didn't implement that, but unfortunately they didn't, and it's just that's what we have. So if you want to occasionally hide people out in the wilderness if they're not flagged up, turn that on. You might get a couple extra frames out of it. Now, moving on to graphics and textures. I have my texture quality on high because, you know, blurry textures really ruin immersion. As far as I go anyway, when I'm walking around, you know, and it's a beautiful area and I look at a cliff wall and it's just like Play-Doh across the wall, I don't really like that. It looks really, really bad to me. So I make sure I have the textures on high at all times. Now, under graphics, however, this is interesting. I have it set to slightly high. I don't know what it is, but between very high and slightly high, I seem to literally get like a 20 to 30 frame rate increase by switching it to slightly high, and I notice next to zero difference whatsoever. Like, you know, very slight shadows here and there, you know, the occasional light ray, you know, stuff like that. Ooh, stuff like that sort of changes, but really, realistically, when you're out, you know, running around and fighting, you're not going to notice any difference at all. And it gives you a massive frame rate increase, like absolutely massive. I can't stress it enough, guys. Try slightly high rather than very high. See how it plays, and we'll go into this stuff here. So anti-aliasing. So anti-aliasing is basically, if you don't know what it is, it's an anti-jagged line blurring system. The games will use to give itself a more smooth appearance. Now, Black Deserts is sort of hit or miss. Some people love it, some people hate it. I personally have it on. If you turn it off, I find the game seems very, very jagged. It almost looks like a PlayStation 2 game. But unfortunately, you can't adjust. And I think it might use FXAA, not MSAA, which is the more less blurry looking, better type of one, but harder on your frame rate. I personally have it on. I don't really notice that much, but I notice when it's off. So I turn that on. Now, screen space ambient occlusion, SSAO, is basically, I like to sum it up to people as contact shadows. Like, so you'll have shadows under characters and stuff like that, but, you know, where their feet touch the ground, you can tell there's an obvious shadow and a foot, and it's just sort of like two separate entities. SSAO will put like a blur shadow on it, which will make it look more realistic, but it does actually lower your frame rate quite a lot. So if you are having serious frame rate issues, I recommend turning that off. I'll have you look down here towards the grass when I turn it off. See how the sort of contact shadows around the ground turn off? That's what I'm talking about. It sort of gets rid of stuff like that. And I mean, I don't necessarily think it makes a huge difference whether it's on or off. It definitely makes a huge difference in towns, at least to like how the game looks. In terms of frame rate, you'll notice a huge difference having it off. But play around with it. Some people can play with it. Some people can't play the game without it. They just think it looks too unrealistic and video gamey with it off. So try having that. Now, display filter. Display filter basically, guys, this game, things far away don't look good. As far as like anybody can tell, like anything even slightly far away, like look at that tree in the background there. If you were to turn the display filter off and apply it, it basically doesn't blur the background. But the problem is the stuff in the background looks really bad. So it's kind of up to you if you want to have it on. I don't really notice a huge difference whether it's on or off in terms of like when you're out playing. It doesn't seem to have a huge impact on frame rate either, but if you want to see stuff farther away more clearly, for some reason, turn that on or turn it off. I have it personally turned on because the stuff far away is very sort of blobby and gross. And I kind of like, you know, the fade effect makes it look more, you know, sort of like you actually would in real life. When it's farther away, things get blurrier and all that sort of stuff. Far away objects. You cannot actually adjust this if you are on slightly high. It basically just slightly improves the effects of far away objects. But I don't think the far away objects look good with it on anyway, so there's no real need to have it. Depth of field. All right, so this one is an interesting one. Depth of field basically blurs the background and focuses on your character, but people don't understand when they have it on or off that it actually only applies when you hide your UI with Control U. Now see here, see how the background is so blurry, but when I take it off, it's not. It is only for UI off screenshots and videos. Now actually what you can do while holding down Control in this mode, you can actually adjust the focus of that depth of field as well, which is really, really cool. But for the most part, guys, it's not going to have a huge impact unless you're just taking screenshots or you're grinding with your HUD off, essentially. Now, going back into this. Far array NPCs, do you want to see them as a generic model or do you want to have them with their actual clothes on? I have not noticed any frame rate difference with this on or off whatsoever. Might as well have them on. It makes the game a little bit more immersive. But yeah, like I said, if you have a slower computer and you're going into a town, maybe have this turned off. It might give you that little extra boost you need. Hit effects, have this turned on. You know when you're getting hit. That's pretty much it. It doesn't have a huge impact on frame rate, but it helps you sort of understand what's going on in the game, and it will really, really help you sort of understand a little bit more what's going on. Sorry, I had a bit of a cough there. It'll help you sort of understand a little bit more of what's going on. And when you're taking damage, if you not realize, there's a couple mobs in the game, for example, that are ranged. You might not understand that they're hitting you while you're standing there in your inventory. If you have this on, it'll actually let you know that you're getting attacked. So I recommend you have that on. Reduce snow buildup. I have no idea what this ability does. It says snow slowly melts away upon entering combat zones while it builds up in safe zones. It only applies during the winter anyway, and I didn't really notice a big difference with it on or off. I'm not sure, but I'm going to come back to this when it's actually winter time, because for right now, it makes no difference. There's no snow in the game, so don't worry about that. Blood splatter and blood stains. I don't know why these are turned off. Blood splatter basically shows monsters' blood on the ground when you hit them. Blood stains is like when you get hit and blood lands on your screen. That's totally up to you guys if you're a blood person, you're not a blood person. That's really down to you guys. I like having it on. I think it makes the game look a little bit more, hardcore or whatever. I just think it looks better. I have it on. You can turn it off if you like. That's really up to you. Now down here, there's a second optimization tab. The optimization tab in the first one, I guess, wasn't good enough. Now we need more optimization, and a lot of the options are shared. Auto frame optimization, we already had that. Remove others' effects. This basically makes it so when other people are using abilities, you only see their character animation, you don't see all their particle effects. If you are going to go and do world bosses, I highly recommend you turn this off, because when you're doing world bosses, there is like 30 people all using high-end frame abilities, and you're just watching it, and your frame rate tanks, and it's a bad time. But if you can handle it, keep them on. I have it personally turned off. There's no real reason to see other people's effects unless you're like out actively PvPing anyway. But you can just flip this, whenever you go to a world boss. Have that on or off. That's really up to you. Remove other people's lanterns. This is a weird one. So lanterns in this game, basically you can equip them and it makes it lighter around you when it's dark outside. But I don't have any issues seeing in the game when it's dark outside. Maybe if you do, either your screen's too dark or something like that. But I mean, realistically, if you have any issues with it, I just have them turned off because the lanterns introduce more frame rate issues. I don't know anybody who uses a lantern anyway. I don't use a lantern. It's sort of just a weird thing, but I have it turned off. Remove far away adventurers' effects. This is pretty much worth it. If somebody's like 300 feet away from you, you don't need to see their particle effects. There's no real reason for it. Have that turned off, save yourself some frames. And then upscale and low power option we already went over. Now, onto the effects tab. I have my display color scheme on Vibrance. There is a whole bunch of color filters here to match your Instagramming needs. I personally have it on Vibrance. Vibrance is, I think, the default one. I think it's recommended 1, or recommended 2 is no contrast. However, I like to combine the two of them. I go to Vibrance and then turn the contrast to 0. This basically gives you more color, but it doesn't darken the image at all. So you still have just as good a clarity in dark areas. If you really want to, keep it super realistic, you could turn that contrast back up a little bit, but I keep it at 0. Gamma, that's your brightness, boys. That's pretty much it. Everyone should know what gamma is. It just adjusts your brightness. I have it at 0. Contrast adjusts how dark the blacks are and how light the lights are. If you have it at -50, it looks really, really terrible. If you have it at 50, the game looks really moody. Default for vibrance is 0 gamma and 20, I believe, contrast. I keep mine at 0 contrast. Like I said, get that extra color, but don't get any of the extra darkness. It'll help you see better. Effect opacity. This is essentially how hard you want your effects to be seen. If you want them full vision particle effects or just sort of like ghosts, let's say, of a particle effect. It's literally how clear your effects are. I have mine at the default, but you can pretty much turn these all the way up if you really want. If you were getting some frame rate problems while grinding, turn these all the way to 30 and you won't necessarily see them anywhere near as much. Combat focus. Now this is sort of a weird effect. It's sort of like a tunnel vision effect you have on your character. I have mine at default. I'll also recommend you turn it to 0 if you were getting any sort of like motion sickness or anything like that. It might be worth it to turn your combat focus to 0. It doesn't make a huge difference. It's all just a sort of visual effect. And then color vision aid. If you have any sort of color blindness, this will help you with different things like colors on the minimap dots. Certain abilities, stuff like that will change their colors. Camera graphics. So camera graphics, the very first one is camera vision range. This is your field of view. Again, if you are getting motion sickness while playing this game, please, please, please turn the camera vision range to 70. No matter what you're doing, turn your camera vision to 70. It'll give you a bigger field of view. As you can see when I turn this down, it looks like it zooms in on my character, but they stay nearly the same size. It's because it's cutting off the sides of the image and then stretching it out. Make sure you have that at 70, guys. Biggest field of view possible, best vision possible, the lowest amount of camera spinning, motion sickness, all that great stuff. Turn that to 70. Overall camera effects. This is essentially how you want your game to look while you are in combat. As you can see, I have everything on 0. While I'm using effects here, you can see that pretty much nothing happens to the screen. I just have my camera, you know, it stays behind my character and I do the abilities. But if we were to crank this all the way up, all the way to 100, you'll see that it gets a little more, let's say a little more action movie-ish. Lots of camera shake, you know, blurriness, zooming in and out. It makes it look a little bit more like an action movie. I personally don't like it. I don't see the need for it. And it does actually lower your frame rate quite a bit. So I usually just tend to have it turned off. The only one I will recommend is if you, I think if you have the camera effect turned all the way up, yeah, you don't even get any motion blur. I believe the blur one is the motion blur from what I know. Blur effect. Yeah, that one's motion blur. So if you're a motion blur kind of guy, that's the one you're looking for. Again, I don't really have it on. It sort of, it has this effect, it might be hard to tell in the video, where it sort of blurs in and out when you're using abilities. I find it makes me feel kind of queasy. I don't really know what it is. It feels like I'm sort of like moving in and out, and I don't like any of the camera effects. But if you're doing, you know, like a montage or, you know, like a machinima or something like that in Black Desert, maybe keep them on. It'll make it look cooler. But when you're actually, you know, trying to practically grind and stuff like that, it's not so good. It's not that great, but I mean, that's all preference. Again, all 100% up to you. Now for screenshots, you can screenshot at a higher resolution than normal. If you are doing current resolution, I mean, that's fine. 4K resolution. If you are taking photos for, you know, I use mine in Discord. I always use mine at 4K resolution. The 8K looks even better. But if you are sharing your screenshots in certain areas like Discord and maybe Facebook, stuff like that, they do actually have a resolution cap and image file size cap. So I keep mine at 4K. Screenshot format, keep it at JPEG. I don't know why mine was on PNG. This will also affect your image size, and it doesn't really affect the quality because it's a 4K screenshot. Watermark. How much do you want the Black Desert logo in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen? You can basically affect if you want it sort of halfway clear, if you want it fully, you know, visible. I don't really care. I tend to sort of edit it out anyway, so I just keep mine at 100%. I mean, you can keep it at 20, but I just crop it out anyway. Watermark size, do you want it small, normal, or big? That's the size of the logo. And then you can put it wherever you want too. Top left, top right, bottom left, or bottom right. I keep mine on the bottom right. That's the default. And what region do you want it to say? If you are from any of these other regions, you can keep it somewhere else, or you can just hit no watermark and hit confirm. I didn't actually remember recognizing that before, so I didn't even know that was in there. We're all learning something today. But yeah, that's what I have it at for my settings. Now for audio settings, I have music, sound effects, and ambient sound turned on, but I have the mount music turned off. I don't like the mount music in this game. It's kind of cool at first, but eventually you're on a horse a lot, and you hear that same like 10-second loop of music over and over and over again. I'd rather, if I'm going to be listening to in-game music, just hear the city music, the field music, and not just have the same, you know, galloping horse song over and over and over again. Whisper alerts, turn that on so you can tell when someone whispers you. And system tray sound is essentially, do you still want to hear the in-game sounds while you have the game minimized to your system tray? I very rarely minimize the system tray anyway. I don't really care. And if I did have it, I don't know why I would want to continue hearing the noise. If I was going to continue hearing the noise, I would just keep the game not minimized. So I have that turned off. Combat music, I have that always off. The combat music is in the same vein to me as the riding music. I would rather just hear the zone music and keep that rather than have it, you know, always on or switching back and forth. I don't really care about the combat music. I just keep the regular zone music. Toggle fairy's voice, come on. Do you want that fairy talking to you 24/7 if you have a fairy? Absolutely not. You want that shit turned off. Turn that off. Now for general settings. These ones are actually fairly important. If you guys have been wondering how to turn off those notifications at the top of the screen, turn off different things like that, I have those right here for you. Activate aiming assistance. This basically means, so instead of aiming at your crosshair, if you put your crosshair near an enemy, it'll automatically lock onto it. Great for targeted abilities, characters like ranger, stuff like that. It doesn't matter how good your aim is, guys. Just turn on aiming assistance. There's no real need not to. Quick slot, this one's sort of weird. I don't really know how it functions. It like separates your quick slots so you can like move them around and stuff. I just leave it off. I don't really mess around with that type of thing. It's kind of weird. Simplify UI. Simplify the user interface to display only important information. Definitely have this turned off because the game doesn't show you enough information as it is, and limiting the amount of information that it just happens to piece out to you doesn't make any sense. You want as much information as possible, so keep that turned on. Or turned off, sorry. Screensaver. This basically means when you're AFK at your screen for a while, it'll do sort of like, it'll put on different color effects and move around and, you know, give you like rotating camera view. Basically means that you're not just sitting staring at the one spot for a long time. I like it. I don't really see the need to turn it off. I mean, I'm never like standing still for a long period of time and needed it to not be on anyway. So I just keep it turned on. Show hide. So this is a whole bunch of stuff. Always show my name, always hide my name, display my name when attacked. I have always hide my name turned off. I feel like having text floating above people's heads really breaks the immersion in the game for me, so I have everyone's names turned off. Again, here, display others' names. I have those turned off. Display party member names. This one I find really convenient, so if you're in a party and there's other people around, you can track who is on your team, who is not there. I tend to have that one on, but outside of that, I have everything else turned off. Show stacked HP bar might be good if you're out PvPing because it'll show you how much HP the person has left. So it says here, each character's HP bar will display a different color for every 1,000 HP. You can kind of get an idea how tanky the player is. Characters. Zone change. Highlight your character when entering and exiting safe combat zones. I have this turned on if I'm ever trying to go fishing and I want to be as close to the combat zone as possible, but not quite in it. Maybe fishing at Velia, stuff like that. I have that turned on. All these ones I have turned off because I don't really care about any of those. Highlight your enemies red. You want to have this on so you can tell if someone's attacking you. Have this turned on. Highlight guild members in blue. This one basically means on your mini-map, you will see a blue icon if somebody is in your guild. It's really, really cool. Sometimes you're just walking around town, you'll see someone, you're like, hey, I recognize that guy. So that's kind of cool. I have that turned on. Same party, again, same thing. Your party members are green on your mini-map. I have that turned on. And display your party members' hit effects. If it's sort of similar to that hide character effects from before. If you want to see your party members' effects, you can have that one turned on. As for pets, do you want to see every single pet in the game? Probably not. Do you want to see your pets? That's up to you. I have a bunch of red pandas and they're super cute, so I keep them turned on. Or you can just hide all your pets if you don't really care and you just look at them as loot picker-uppers, you monster. Now as for your fairy, I have my fairy hidden. I don't actually have a fairy, but even if I did, I would have it hidden. Just more stuff, visual clutter floating around on screen. Doesn't really matter, but if you're one of those people, like, again, you like having all your pets out, you like seeing as much as possible, have that turned on. How many maids you have? You can see this at your residence. I have it set to 0. I don't have a residence as far as I even remember, so it doesn't really matter. But if you want to see all your maids around and have yourself a little harem, turn that up. Show hide miscellaneous. Attack decisions during combat. That was another option before. Combo video guide. Below level 35, this basically will show you a combo like tutorial in the bottom right hand corner of your screen whenever you use an ability. And once you hit level 35 and past that, it basically stops showing you anyway. I have it turned off because I like to figure out the combos myself, and the ones they show you aren't even that great anyway, so I have that turned off. Transparent mast. If you're on a ship, do you want to be able to see through the mast, or do you like to be invisible behind it? That's really up to you. It doesn't really make a huge difference. And you want to show your workers' progress. I don't have any workers set up on this account right now, so I don't have them turned on, but whatever. That's really up to you again. Alerts. These are the things that show up at the top of your screen. So where it has, this person registered this to the marketplace. This person failed this enhancement. This blah, 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 blah. What of those do you want to see? I don't really care about trade events. I don't care about Imperial trading. I don't care if other people get a good horse, and I don't care what life skill level other people hit. So I have all those turned off. I have the enhancement success and fails turned on. Sometimes it's kind of cool, you get a pop-up at the top of the screen like, hey, this guy got a pen Serap's necklace, and you're like, oh shit, good for him. That guy there just got a Tri-Nuver Vambrace, I think it said. If you don't care, though, turn that off. I like having it on because sometimes when you're grinding, it gives you something to read. You're just kind of like rooting for other people. You see some people, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. You'll see people fail really high-end enhancements. Sometimes you'll see them win it. Just sort of something, feel a little more entertained. If you want, like I said, turn those on or off. Marketplaces for item registrations. I recommend you turn this off. It will be going 24/7 no matter what. As far as I can tell, it notifies you anytime anybody lists something over like 1 million silver, and that happens literally like 400 times a second. Have that turned off. And the horse market worker exchange. That's really if you're really into like horse training, or you're really into the worker exchange, stuff like that. Maybe have that turned on. Again, I have that turned off. I don't really care. Zone change. That'll just pop up on screen whether you're entering a safe zone or combat zone. I have that turned on. Get alerts when your fitness level's up. This is your breath, your strength, and your health. It'll basically pop up whenever you get it. I like knowing when I get a new breath level. Also, my stamina is 420. Oh, blazer. Conquest and Guild Wars. I do not care. I have them turned off. If you want to get alerts for when Guild Wars are popping up, when people deck on other people, stuff like that, have those turned on. Black Spirit alert. The Black Spirit, I want him on screen as little as possible, so I have his alert turned off. Pearl item suggestions. These are basically ads. If you're running around and your inventory hits 100% weight limit, it'll pop up saying, hey, come to our store and buy weight limit. And I don't like ads, so I turn their ads off. Guild members log in. If you're part of a big guild and you got a lot of friends in it, maybe you want to see when they log in and out, have that turned on. Don't get me wrong, I love my guild, but I don't need to know when they're all logging in and logging out because I can just check the guild menu, so I don't really care about that. Guild missions, I'm actually going to turn this on. We are doing more guild missions now. If you are part of a guild that requires you to do guild missions as much as possible, maybe you don't want to check the menu all the time, that'll pop up as soon as a new guild mission gets registered and you can go out and do it. And get alert when strong monsters are nearby. I mean, I just look for the purple health bars realistically, but if you want to have your whole screen get really dark and scary and warn you that there's, high level things nearby, maybe have that turned on. As for the world map, this is pretty much nothing. Like what camera angle do you want your world map on and stuff like that, but it's all adjustable in the world map while you're using your mouse, so none of that really matters. What language you're in, that's pretty much, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. What language you're in, stuff like that, so don't really worry about that. Under miscellaneous, navigation guide. If you are going towards a quest or a location, do you want to have anything on the road? You can see if I put on like guide arrows or guide lines, it'll basically put like a long line on the floor, sort of like you ever played Dead Space. I don't really care. I feel like it breaks, immersion in the game, and I already have like an auto path to it and a line on my minimap. I don't need a line on the floor as well. I feel like it's sort of unnecessary. You can auto reject party and guild invites. I guess if you're like a super antisocial person, you want to literally say no parties, no guild invites, stop it. You can turn that on, I guess. I don't know why you'd ever be that way unless you're like someone super famous and literally getting 24/7 invites. Have that turned off. I don't mind if people invite me to parties. It's whatever. Automatically turn down duel requests. If you're getting spammed for duels, maybe have that turned on. If you don't really care, I mean, I just hit escape. Trade requests, again, nobody really trades in this game that often. Like, trading is really not like a thing. It's not like RuneScape where there's a lot of person-to-person trading. It's very marketplace focused. The only time I've ever been asked to trade is if somebody was giving me like health potions out on the road or something. So I don't really get those very often. Rotate minimap. Please have this turned off at all times. This will basically make it so that you are always looking forwards and your map rotates around you. That sounds like a good idea at first until you are in the desert and you definitely need to know which direction is north, south, east, and west. I actually had this turned on at one point when I was out in the desert and I could not find my way back because even though I knew I had to go southeast to get to Sand Grain, I didn't know which direction southeast was because I didn't have it set so that, you know, my character rotated and the map was always fixed. I had it so the map was rotating and then you're just screwed at that point. So there's no sense having a map if you don't know what direction's north. So I have that rotate minimap turned off. Hides the UI window when attacked. I don't really think this works very well. I've never really noticed what it does, so I just have it turned off. Auto run camera. When you're auto running, how much do you want the camera to basically follow when you turn? So if your character turns like this, do you want the camera to follow you or do you want the camera to stay still while your character runs to the side? It's all a preference thing. It's not going to make any difference on your frame rate. And then how fast do you want the auto run camera to rotate? And that's pretty much it. As for interface settings, this is all up to you guys. You know, what hotkey you want everything at. Yeah, that's pretty much all of it. You can turn on UI mode lock so that when you're in borderless window mode, your mouse won't go past the edge of the screen, stuff like that. But you can also unclick use mouse to move. I'm going to have this on so when you click on the floor, your character won't run there. It's very good depending on the situation. I know some people who actually use click on the floor to move. It has weird interactions with certain abilities and stuff like that. But I have it turned off. Because sometimes when you're trying to click like an interface button, you'll miss it and you'll click over there and you'll start running over there and it closes all your stuff, which is really, really annoying. But there are two options I want to show you guys in here that I find are super important. One of them is under, I believe, where is it? I thought it was under, there's no like interface thing here. There's one very specific one that I wanted to show you guys that you have turned on. I'll find it in a second so I can show you guys. But the second one I wanted to show you is this bad boy right here. Action hotkey scroll down. With hotkey evasion button, you can basically make it so that instead of double tapping one of your movement abilities to evade, you can actually bind that directional dodge to a mouse button. Now, I personally have it for my WW because double pressing W is sort of weird and awkward. So you can bind this to a mouse button, which is super convenient for certain classes. I would recommend you turn that on some people, but that's really up to you. Again, if you find you're not evading very often, you don't necessarily need to have it. I thought I would find it while I was going through here. Oh, sorry, that is what I was talking about. Hide UI. Oh my god, I'm an idiot. Hide UI when attacked. I have this turned off. This basically means when you're trying to show off your gear or open up a menu, if somebody attacks you, it will automatically close all your menus. And it's super frustrating, especially if you're in like a really low level area that has ranged mobs. I'll like, you know, be trying to show people my gear and it'll like auto close it. So I have it turned off. That's what it is. Sorry, that's what I was planning on showing you. So I have this turned off. So some people who are really annoyed when they're trying to, you know, switch their inventory, put something on their hotbar, use a mana potion, something like that, and it keeps closing it because you're getting hit, that is the option for you. And outside of that, guys, that is what I have my options on. The main ones, of course, being slightly high graphics with high textures, turning off all the camera effects, stuff like that. And outside of that, guys, those are the settings that I use for Black Desert. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, go on down and hit the like button. We are actually moving up in those search rankings pretty high. So if you hit that search button, or if you hit that like button, we can maybe move up. And when people search for what the optimal settings are for Black Desert, it will come up now. Because I don't think there's a lot of 2018 guides. Now, I might have to update this video tomorrow because the remaster is coming out tomorrow. As far as I know, it's just the graphics update and then a few gameplay changes. I don't think... Like, I believe you can pick if you want to be in the remaster graphics or not. So none of the rest of this should have any changes whatsoever. But if it does, I will post an update video after that. And you guys have a great night. If you want to join the guild, again, come in Discord, message me. I will invite you to the guild, or one of the guild members will. And you guys all have a fantastic evening. This has been Luke for Dungeoneers. See you in the next one.